Hello class, in this video we'll create a GTA style video game without any script, but only triggers. And we'll make a characters talk, and we'll pick up object, and we'll also drop object. Alright, so let's get started. So first we're going to import all the character models I provided, and we'll import the Hawk character. So basically I created these characters in Adobe Fuse. In this program you can customize the character with the template they provided, and you can also use Daze 3D or Make Human, and these two programs that you can use their templates and also customize your character. And then I use the Maximo to auto rig the character. It's very easy, and once it's auto rigged, and you can use their animation templates just for learning purpose. And you can choose the version you want and frame rates, and you can download the model. And then we're going to create a material, and we're going to drop in the diffuse map and also the normal map. And you'll see the normal map has some issue, and just click on fix now, and you're going to make it as a normal map. And then we're going to drag our material onto different parts of our character's body. And here I set the character's size XYZ as 1.8, which is 1 meter and 80 centimeters. Here, if you get into the character pack, you will see it has the animations. But when you preview the game, the character is not animated. So here, basically, we need to create something called animator controller. So it is like a player. You're going to play the animations we have. So double click to open, and you're going to jump to the animator tab. And then drop in the animation clip in here, and by default you can connect the entrance state to it, and we'll connect it to the exit state. So basically when the game is awake, it's going to repeat this cycle to play the animation. And then we're going to select the character, and we're going to add a component, and here search for animator. And we're going to drag in the animation controller we just created and use it as the controller for the character. So basically this will allow our character to play the animation. And then I'll go to the first person controller, and I'll set the height as 175 centimeters high. And for the X and Z I will keep as 1 because I want it to be slim. So now you can see that the player is the same height as the character. But be careful about this, because for example here our character is stuck at this point because the model, so when you are modeling the assets, be aware about the size and height. So you can either lower down the player's height, or you can increase the watchtower's height. Alright, so now we're going to drop in the Ethan character, and we're going to set the scale as 165 centimeters high. And we're going to create a material, and we're going to drop in the textures. Alright, and then here I can also create an animator controller for Ethan. And here we're going to drag in the animation clip, and we're going to apply it to our character. Okay, then we're going to drag in the X, and we're going to create a material for each part of the X, and apply the texture and apply the material onto the X. So now we're going to move on to the audio source. So here we're going to create a folder and name it as voice. And basically here we have 4 clips of voice, and this is the script. Okay, and then here we're going to create a empty object and name it as a voice, the first character. And we're going to drag in the first sentence onto it. And as you play, you can see that the sound is very loud.
Would you climb onto the watchtower and see where he is?
That is because if you zoom out, you can see that the audio, it covers this whole area. That's because it's so loud. And we can scale it down. We can scale down the max distance. And then we can switch it to 3D sound and change it to linear drop off.
Someone went out for a walk.
So now as you can see, as you get closer to the character, you can hear the voice. And then we're going to create a second empty object and we're going to name it as voice 2 because this is for the second sentence of the Hawk character. And we're going to drag and drop the voice onto it, and we want this voice to cover the watchtower because for the second sentence we want our player to be on the watchtower and then the Hawk just talk to him. And then we can test a play, so you can check off maximize on play. And then when we enter the game again, we can switch between the different tabs. So here we can, activate the second voice.
Do you see him? Would you walk to him and ask him to come?
And we can hear it, so everything works. So here, as you can see, if I drop the max distance and when I exit the play mode, it's going to reset the value. So be careful about this. So when you change anything in the play mode, remember, when you exit the play mode, it's going to set it back. Right, so now we're going to create the first sentence for Ethan, and we're going to drag the first sentence onto the voice, the audio source. And we're also going to change the settings. So in this sentence, Ethan will request the player to help him to get the X. And then he's going to go back home, so we're going to duplicate this character. And we're going to place it in front of the house, and then we're going to rename it to Ethan Back Home. And then we're going to create another empty object, and we're going to drop the second sentence onto it. Okay, and then we're going to change the setting. And we can rename the first Ethan as Ethan in the Wood. And then here we're going to create another folder and rename it by script, and we're going to drop in the active trigger script. So basically this script is a Unity default script. It's just used for triggers. Okay, we will not change anything on it, we're going to just use it. So here we're going to create a trigger for the Hawk character. And then we're going to create another cube, and we're going to place it on the side of the red cube. So basically the red cube is going to activate the first sentence, and the blue cube is going to deactivate the first sentence. Make sure you also check on each trigger, so there will be triggers. And here I would mean disable, these 4 cubes. So just to make sure you rename it as a disable Hawk 1. And select all of them, and we're going to add a activate trigger script. And then for the first one, Hawk Talk 1, we're going to drop in the first sentence onto it. And for the source, it's going to be the first person controller. So whenever first person controller enter this trigger, you're going to activate the first sentence.
Hello, my My son went out for a walk. Would you climb onto the watchtower and see where he is?
And then we can select the for disable trigger, we're going to set as deactivate function, and also we're going to bring the first sentence as a target, and we want to repeat the trigger because if you get in and out, that the character to repeat talking.
Hello, my son went out for a walk.
And also we're going to check off mesh render, so we will only show the trigger. And then we're going to create another trigger on the watchtower. So we're going to use this trigger for the second sentence of the Hawk character. So whenever you get onto the watchtower, he will ask you, did you see his son? So we're going to drop in the second sentence on the trigger, and we're going to use the first person controller as the source. And we're going to repeat the trigger. And just remember, for the disable talk to, just set it as a deactivate function. Alright, and we remember also set them as a trigger, and also check off mesh render.
Do you see him? Would you walk to him and ask him to come home?
Alright, and then we're going to head over to Ethan, and we're going to create a cube as the trigger. And then on the side, we're going to place disable trigger, which is going to disable the first sentence. And select all of them and add active trigger script, and we're going to drop in the first sentence as a target and first person controller as a source. And remember to set as deactivate for the disable triggers. And then for Ethan back home, we're also going to create a trigger as well. So whenever you take the X back to here, Ethan going to talk to you, hey, you can drop the X in front of the door. So this is what this trigger going to do. Okay, so here we're going to bring in the second sentence, Ethan's second sentence, and first person controller as the source. And we don't have to repeat the trigger because we only want him to see this once. And make sure to select all of them and check off mesh render and check on is trigger. And then we're going to go to the X, and we're going to create a trigger for the X. And for this trigger, we're going to net it to activate Ethan back home. So whenever you come here to pick up the X, you're going to activate Ethan back home. And you're going to also deactivate Ethan in the wood. And also we want it to hide the X itself. And we're going to check off mesh render and check on is trigger. And we're going to turn off Ethan back home. So now we can test the play.
Hi, sorry, I didn't know. Thank you. You can leave the axe in front of the door.
Everything works perfectly. And now we get a lot of triggers, and we're going to organize them a little bit. So we're going to create an empty object and rename it as a Hawk trigger, and we're going to bring in all of these 5 triggers into it. So this will be the first sentence trigger. Then we're also going to create the second sentence trigger, and we're going to bring in the 2 triggers into it. And same thing for the triggers for Ethan. So basically by doing this, we are grouping the individual triggers together. Then we're going to select the X trigger, and whenever you pick up the X, we want it to activate the Ethan's second sentence trigger. Because remember, in the beginning it is hidden, and we don't want it to be activated until you picked up the X. And then we're going to create a trigger in front of the door, which is, you're going to drop the X at here. So we're going to duplicate the X, and for the duplication, we're going to rename it as X in front of the door, and we're going to place it in front of the door. So you can hold down V key so you can snap the X to here. And for this trigger, we're going to create the active trigger function, and we will need it to activate the X in front of the door. So whenever you enter this trigger, you're going to activate the X. And we can hide the X so it will not show up in the beginning. And we'll also hide the door trigger because we don't want it to show up in the beginning, and we're going to use the X trigger to activate. So here we're going to create an active trigger for the X, and whenever you enter the X trigger, it's going to show the door trigger. And here we also want the X trigger to deactivate the Ethan's first sentence, because whenever you enter the X trigger, Ethan will go back home, right? So we don't need the first sentence anymore. So here we can create a deactivate trigger, and we're going to drop in the first sentence here. So the first sentence trigger will be deactivated once you pick up the X. And also for the Hawk character, after we get onto the top of the watchtower, we don't need him to see the first sentence anymore. So we can go to the trigger on the watchtower, and we can create a deactive trigger and net it to deactivate his first sentence. And then once we pick out the X, we want it also deactivate the Hawk's second sentence, because whenever you are in this point, the Hawk character don't need to see anything anymore, right? So we can net it to deactivate Hawk's second sentence. And then for Ethan's second sentence trigger, after I tested the game, I found out that we don't need to disable that trigger, because once Ethan finishes talking, he will just stop. So once everything is done, you can go to the build setting, and if your scene is not here, just click on add open scene, it will be here. And then you can choose your system to build, and then you can publish the game.
Hi. Sorry, I didn't know.
So this is how you will build a GTA style game without any script, but just triggers.